Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeremy from the Renegade Coder, and I'm about 11 days into No Shave November, and it's not looking so good. At any rate, what we're looking to do today is learn how to format strings in Python. Right now, you can imagine that we can create a string that looks sort of like this. And what we want to be able to do is add information to this string dynamically. So if I have my cat's name, we'll go with my current cat's name, which is Reina. And then we want to be able to inject that in our string. So the output string looks like my cat, comma, Reina is cute. And right now that's a static string, but in this tutorial we'll learn how to create this string dynamically. In other words, how do we insert name into that text? As always, there are a lot of different ways to solve this problem. The first one I'm going to talk about is concatenation, which is pretty straightforward. If we use the string from above, my cat Reina is cute, we can split the string into two pieces. So we can go ahead and say my cat, comma, space, and then we can use the plus operator for concatenation. Insert the name Reina, or we can actually use our name variable, and then insert a comma and is cute. Now hopefully, and as you can see, it actually does put this whole string together. So what you'll see is this first half, my cat, then we add in the variable name, which will get converted to Reina, and then we'll close out the string here. So this is a pretty straightforward way of creating dynamic strings. You can insert whatever text you want. In this case, we're using the name variable, but you could have put any other variable that you wanted there. If you're not in love with concatenation, you can actually generate a string using multiple print statements. And this won't show up as nice here in the terminal, but what you can imagine doing is you can build your string where you say my cat. And right now, if you close this out, this is going to print my cat on its own line. But if you add this parameter here, you can remove the new line print, so it'll print my cat on one line, and then anything you print after that is just going to be appended to that previous line. So we can go ahead and try that. And then we can do Reina. We'll print Reina here. And of course, it doesn't look all that great in this example, but finally, we can print that original string, comma, space, is cute, and remove the closing. That will make sure the new line prints. And then in 3 lines, you'll see my cat Reina is cute. Obviously, you can't see that in this case because we have multiple prints, but had you ran this in a script, you would have gotten my cat Reina is cute all in one line. Now, obviously, if you're not going to print your string, this isn't the best solution. You wouldn't want to use this solution, but it's a nice handy solution if you didn't want to have to deal with concatenation. Of course, I don't always recommend using this because like concatenation, this isn't always the ideal solution, but it's quick and dirty. We'll see some better solutions soon. Outside of multiple prints and concatenation, there's actually a nice solution which uses the join function. And if you've ever seen the join function, basically you need a string, and I'll show sort of a silly example with commas, dot join, and then you need some sort of iterable in here, as you can see from the parameters. So I'll go ahead and pass an array, and then I'll say hi, comma, how, comma, are, comma, you. And then this will join all 4 of these words with a comma. So you can see hi, comma, how, comma, are, comma, you. Now, if you wanted to do something similar with our string, you would go back, remove this comma so that it just is an empty space. And then you would insert the strings that we had before. The second string would be name. And then the last string would be is cute. And remove this 4th string. So now, when you call this, it generates my cat Reina is cute. And you can see why it does that is it basically handles this the same way concatenation does. So it's going to take these 3 strings and combine them with the empty string. And as a result, there's no additional string in the final string. So this is kind of a handy solution, especially if you have a lot of strings or if you already have an array of strings. This can be a handy way to format. All right, well, at this point, we're going to start looking at some more interesting solutions. Instead of concatenation or printing or using these join functions, we're actually going to use some of the built-in string formatting tools. So if we have our string here, we can actually replace Reina with this %s token, and then we can provide %name at the end. Now the syntax probably looks a little weird, but if you've ever used like C or Java, this is pretty straightforward string formatting. The %s basically means I want to insert a string at that location, and then based on the position of the arguments on the right side of the percent sign, they'll get swapped in on the left side. So position sort of matters here. So if maybe we had two %s's, the order of operations on the right actually matters. But in this case, if I hit enter, it's going to swap that %s with the name variable. So that's kind of cool. But what if I want to add a little bit more? So right now my cat is cute and is %d years old. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a tuple and throw a number in there. Now this is probably a little confusing, but basically the first %s here is going to line up with the first argument on the right side. So name is going to swap into %s. And then on the right side we have is %d. Well, %d basically means decimal or number, and we'll swap in the 3 here on the right side. So if all goes well, we should get this statement. My cat Reina is cute and is 3 years old. Now, just to prove to you that this is how this works, if we swap the order, we're going to run into some issues. Right now, %d cannot take in a string. So this might have actually worked on the left side. Maybe Python's smart enough to convert that 3 into a string, but it definitely can't convert Reina into a number, so this string crashes. But you can see how this would be a handy tool if you wanted to maybe actually draw out the full string and then just swap in dynamically variables at each of these formatters. Overall, I really like the solution. This is the one I used for a long time. But recently, Python has come out with some newer solutions, which I think are even nicer than this. So we'll get to those shortly. Now, if you weren't in love with the previous solution, what we can actually do is put in sort of these weird sort of brace placeholders where you want to insert variables, and then call .format directly. So right now, this looks pretty similar to the previous solution where instead of %s, we put in some of these braces, and then we call .format and pass name. And then hopefully .format is smart enough to figure out what type needs to go in those braces. And luckily right now, we've got my cat Reina is cute. And again, this solution isn't all that different from the % operator solution that we had last time. So if I wanted to do something like this, we could then insert another argument, let's say 3, and this will generate our string exactly the same. And again, I think this will also fall prey to the same sort of issues, but now instead of running into type errors, we'll just have sort of a nonsensical string. So my cat 3 is cute and is Reina years old. Obviously not the string that we want, so order matters still. However, there's this cool little feature, which we can leverage here, where I can insert something like this, where now they're not just empty braces, they're named. So I can do something like name equals name and age equals 3. And when I run this, it's going to fill those spaces according to the variables, or as we call them, keyword arguments, rather than by position. So I can actually switch the order here. And it won't matter, the string will still fill out as expected. Now this is a lot nicer of a solution, at least in my opinion, because you no longer have the issue of positional arguments. And you also don't have the typing issue. This seems to not take account of whether you use %s or %d. This is just going to populate. Now that might be a perk or not, depending on how you look at it, because you can see in this case we didn't get an error when we probably should have. But I find it kind of nice because you don't have to worry about sort of errors popping up here and there during runtime. Instead, you just have these keyword arguments, and they map as exactly as you expected. And actually, the string pretty much reads exactly as you expect. The only difference is there's these weird braces in the middle. So you're like, okay, my cat name is cute and is 8 years old. Kind of works like a Mad Lib. So you could just populate this side with pretty much anything you wanted. And you would get this string populated just like old school Mad Libs. Overall, I really, really like this solution. I think this is even better than the percent solution because you have control of where the arguments are going to go. My only problem is that there's actually an even better solution than this one, and we'll look at that next. Now, at this point, if you're rocking Python 3.6 or greater, this is the solution you're going to want to use. We'll go ahead and use that same brace notation that we had before, and then we're just going to throw an F in the front. And this is what's called an F string. In other words, you can think of F as format or dot format. It's exactly the same, except now it's going to pull name from the current context or the environment. So in this case, we have a name variable that stores Reina. So we're going to auto-populate this string with that variable. Now that is condensed, clean, and it pretty much removes all the issues that we had before. The only issue is now I need to declare a variable ahead of time. So if I want this same string, we can go ahead and say age, years old, and bam. My cat Reina is cute and is 3 years old. By far, this is my favorite solution. Unfortunately, it's relatively new. You have to have Python 3.6 or greater. Luckily, Python 3.8 is out as at the time of this video, so hopefully you're not rocking Python 2. Otherwise, you're sort of losing out here. All right, well, once again, I think it's time to do a bit of a performance check. As usual, it takes me a little bit of time to put these strings together to do the performance check, so I'll go ahead and build those now and sort of just cut once the strings are all built. All right, well, I put together these strings. In this case, I think I made, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these strings. This does not cover all 6 solutions because I can't actually test the printing solution because I'm not trying to watch a million prints on my screen. But you can also see that we used a different string because I copied all the same strings from the article. And these are the strings I originally used for testing. But at this point, all we need to do for testing is we need to import the timeIt library. And then we need to do first min, and then timeIt.repeat. And then we'll go ahead and pass setup to setup. So setup equals setup. And then we'll do statement equals, and the first one up. Let's go ahead and do concatenation. And then we'll go ahead and throw the number of repeats. We'll go ahead and do 10. Pretty random number, but that's just how I'm feeling today. And then hopefully this gives us some number. Okay, so there's our first runtime. We'll go ahead and copy this and then swap out concatenation with the join solution. Okay, that appears to be a little faster. We'll go ahead and do the modulus solution or the percent solution. And faster still, we'll go ahead and use the format function, but we'll do ordered first. Okay, that's pretty slow. And we'll do the named solution next. Okay, pretty slow. And then we'll go ahead and use the f-string solution. So yeah, and no surprise, the f-string solution is the fastest by quite a bit. I'm not usually surprised by that because when the Python developers put together these new features, they usually try to make sure they're written, in a low-level language and that they're as fine-tuned as possible. So this f-string solution is about as fast as it's going to get, probably because it's written in straight-up C. But I think all these solutions are pretty good, and obviously building strings, performance doesn't usually matter unless maybe you're using those strings to build something, but usually I'm using format strings just to debug. In this case, I would probably use f-string because it's cleanest, quickest, easiest, but of course, this is open to your interpretation. You're free to use whichever solution you like. Well, with that, I'm done. Except there's one last thing I want you to do, and that is the regular challenge. So that's something I've started to do in the last couple videos, and that's something I want to do today as well. And since formatting strings isn't all that interesting, I thought today's challenge could be Mad Libs. In other words, I want you to generate some string which accepts sort of nouns, verbs, adjectives, all that fun stuff in a string, and does so sort of randomly. So what I would be expecting is maybe you have a list of nouns, and I'm going to go ahead and stick with the theme, but I'll make sure I include my other cat, Mandy. And then adjectives, we'll use silly ones like tall and small and red and blue. And then I want you to basically generate a Mad Lib using these lists. So what I'll do is I'll create a silly Mad Lib, and you can create your own. And we'll say the adjective cat named, and then we'll go ahead and throw in a noun. Well, in this case, these are proper nouns, but that's fine. The adjective cat named nouns. And then you'll know that this doesn't work right now because those variables don't exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import random. So we'll go ahead and do random.choice of adjectives and random.choice of nouns. And then we'll go ahead. So now this sentence should read something like, the blank cat named blank is hungry. Oops, we made a misspelling here. The tall cat named Mandy is hungry. So this is sort of my Mad Lib, right? I want to be able to generate a string using some random list of nouns, random list of adjectives, and even you could let the user supply these if you wanted to, and generate your Mad Lib. That's sort of my challenge. I don't really care how you do it. Just write a program that, provided a prompt, allows a user to maybe fill in this stuff or randomly generates a Mad Lib. So in my case, I could actually keep running this and I'll get hopefully different answers. There we go. So we got tall 3 times, but the 3rd time we got Raina. There we go. The small cat named Mandy is hungry. So you can see we generate some different choices. But why don't you go ahead and see if you can generate your own Mad Lib using these new tools that we just discussed. All right, well, that's it for today. As usual, I'd like to give a big shout out to all my patrons. As always, I like to list them on the screen. If you'd like to be added to that list, go ahead, pledge a couple bucks, and I'll throw you on the list there. I'd love to grow this community. I have a lot of goals I'd like to reach at some point. So if you'd like to support that mission, come on, join the club. So I figured this video wouldn't be complete unless I gave Raina a little bit of a cameo. So here she is. She seems to be content. As always, I'll link the artwork in the description. This time I picked up a little bit of clan ad art from ncool36. So make sure you head on over there and give them a shout out. Once again, if there's anything else you'd like to see, feel free to drop it in the comments. I enjoy making these videos, though I am pretty busy, so you can probably expect one of these videos a month. I'm shooting for a couple over my winter break, but if you'd like to add to the backlog, go ahead and throw me a recommendation. In addition, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments as well. I'm happy to entertain any questions you'd like. And with that, thanks.